We are diving into something fun today. We are talking about something that neither of us knows about, but we are exploring it together because why the hell not? Now, we're talking about money scripts. I had this really, really cool guest on called Dr. Brad Klontz. He's a money psychologist, and he actually went in and created something called money scripts. And essentially, the idea is he came up with 4 categories that a lot of people fall into. Now, like, let me ask you, like, what do you think a money script might be, or a money personality?
Yeah, it seems like an internal dialogue associated with money. And it's sort of kind of like, when you're completely unaware of what you're doing, it's like your core essence. It's your basic default. It's like the factory mode reset, right? That's to me like when I first heard the term, it's like, okay, well, there must be some internal dialogue that's like at the root of all your financial decisions.
I love that. One of the things too, like you talk about that, it reminds me of like when I buy a camera, a new digital camera, like it will come and sometimes I'll read on something like it's having an error or something. And I'm like, what the heck is wrong with this camera? And it's like, you have to update the firmware. And I was like, what in the hell is the firmware? And so I guess it's like essentially a program that comes with the camera that the camera runs on. And sometimes the program goes wrong. And when the program goes wrong, you got to deal with it. And that's kind of like one of the interesting things that, I think with money scripts. Give me a second here to turn off all of my stuff here. That would be my wife telling me to make sure I turn off the power when I go to bed. So, but the money scripts are like talking about, one of them, like some of them you think about early exposure to money. Like when I was growing up, my family was always tight on cash. My family, my dad, he was a businessman, but he worked for other people in management. And he liked his job. He liked what he was doing. I remember we were living in North Carolina, and he worked at a cassette tape manufacturing place where he would sit there and help manufacture cassettes, and like that's old school, right? And they would have these giant reels that would be playing the cassettes at high speed, and they could record 10 cassettes at high speed at the same time. It was pretty cool to watch these machines. Now, his brother though was a radiologist. My uncle Ian was a radiologist, and he was a radiologist in rural North Carolina. Now, where we were at, it was the middle of nowhere. It was in the Smoky Mountains, and not in the big city Asheville. It was down south in this area like Fletcher, Hendersonville. And one of the things down there is that at that time, they didn't have a really fancy hospital. They had a very small hospital. They built a new one, and my uncle was like, we need to upgrade our equipment. We've got an x-ray machine, and that's pretty much it. So he's like, how about we get an MRI? And they're like, that stuff's expensive, man. We're a small hospital. So he's like, how about this? I buy the MRI and place it in the hospital. So everyone who gets a CAT scan pays me. And the hospital's like, sure, we'll do that. And so they took a cut, he took a cut. And then later on, he was doing that, and same thing. Hey, we need to get this MRI. That's a lot of money. We don't have the budget for an MRI. And he's like, how about I buy the MRI and we split, the profits. He made an insane amount of money on that. Like, cause everyone who came in with an MRI, he's getting paid. And I remember like, dude, and he had the houses, he had the cars, his cars were fun. They were very fun. Oh, dude, yeah, like middle of the 80s, he had Trans Ams, Ferraris, it was like Miami Vice in there. It was like like Smokey and the Bandit. Both of his kids had the Smokey and the Bandit cars. One had it in black, the other one had it in blue. And he had like the Buick Grand National. He had all these things. Like Indiana pace car, an official.
The T-roof. Oh yeah, that's awesome.
You know it, man. And then he had like he had an official Indiana pace car, like one of like 5, and he had this thing. It's like, dude, it was ridiculous, the stuff he bought. Now, I remember this was way back in the day before ATMs, before all that. He had a credit card he carried with him. But when he went places, he carried cash. And I mean, he didn't roll light. Like, he would, anywhere he went, he would carry like
No
10 grand in
shit.
cash, balled up. It was baller money because he didn't know what he was going to buy when he was out. And he came to visit us in Tennessee. You never knew what's going to happen, man. And 10 grand back then was like a lot more money.
That's crazy.
Mid 80s, 10 grand. It was it was crazy money.
And I
remember
$10,000 check once so that I could avoid paying taxes. Some client paid me a check, and I remember like leaving the bank with $10,000 in cash, and it was like the most nerve-wracking thing. I was just like, I'm gonna get money going to the car. I couldn't imagine like going and rolling in general public with 10 grand in your pocket.
100%, right? And he would go, and I remember he came to our house, and he dropped his money clip fell out in our chair. And I wasn't more than 7 or 8. And I found that. money clip. And for 10 seconds, I looked at my mom and I was like, Uncle Ian left his money clip.
Yeah.
It's mine now. And they're like, oh, no, we have to give this back to him. It was like the most devastating thing in my life to have to hand back that money clip, man. Because I was holding it. It was this fat stack of cash. And I was like, damn. But I remember those little things. You have these money memories that leave these traces, and it was scarred me deeply to have to give that back, and then now we're poor again. Fuck,
That's awesome.
Yeah. What about you, man? Any core money memories that you can think of?
So I have a few. So very similar to yours. I remember being on vacation somewhere as a kid, and we were swimming in the pool, and I noticed something really shiny in the bottom of the pool. So I'm like, oh, wow, I'm going to dive down into the pool and see what this is. And it was this beautiful Rolex watch. And I remember like going back up to the surface, and I was waving it to my mom. I was like, Mom, look what I found. And some guy in the, around the pole is like, hey, that's my watch. And so, I had to give it back. It's the same concept, right? Where I found something hugely valuable, and it was just like, I blew it by saying something. So yeah, I've got a lot of those. I stole some money out of my mom's purse once when I was like super young. And she caught me, and she's like, where did this $10 come from? And I was like, oh, I found it down the street in front of so-and-so's house. And she's like, well, you should go back and give it back to them. And so I was like, fuck. So I remember walking back to the neighbor's house, and I was like, yeah, I'm just going to, like, if I don't knock on the door and tell her what happened, my mom's obviously going to find out. So I knock on this lady's door, and I'm like, hey, I found, $10 in your driveway. I think you dropped it. And she she took the money from me. I was thinking, oh, she's going to say that it wasn't hers and that she didn't drop it. But yeah, she's like, oh, thank you. It took my fucking money. Yeah, just random. But I've definitely got a very deep story to tell as it relates to money scripts. And I think I'm just going to wait for the right time to drop it on you as we sort of go through the different types of money scripts.
I love that, man. I love it. Well, it's like, it is fun because from what I've read now, there are 4 main money scripts. Now, the number 1 is all me. And I mean, it's a lot of people though, because number 1 would be like money avoidance. And money avoidance is something because I grew up with that, and it grew up with dealing with not having enough, and then I also grew up with my family being quite conservative Christian. And at that time, and again, everyone quoted the verse, and like they quote the verse wrong, but money is the root of all evil, and it's like, actually, I think I've gotten corrected on the podcast a couple of times. The love of money is the root of all evil. But even that, man, it's like, hang on, why can't you love money? It's like, I'm a chef. Like you're a chef, you can love your knives. They're cool things. You can do stuff with them. And it's like that whole belief that money is bad or rich people are greedy. And you see this a lot in the younger generation. And hang on, guys, I want to rewind something to the moral of those two stories, the pool story and the money clip story. If you find something valuable, shut the hell up. Like that's the
totally.
Just keep your mouth.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh, what was that?
Keep it on the down low. Yeah, exactly.
There we go. But for money avoidance, money is bad. Rich people are greedy. And the thing is that this mindset can often sabotage people's ability to build wealth. And, it's like, oh, I don't want to be rich because, rich people are bad, and these people will avoid money too because they often don't have it or they just don't feel like there's an ability to achieve it. And so, or maybe there's problems with it. And the easiest thing to do is to this is the proverbial, ostrich with its head in the sand, which ostriches don't actually do that. But cartoons would make you think they do.
Yeah. So, money avoidance, I don't really know much about this topic at all. But I wonder if a lot of people that fall into this category sort of feel like, the only way that you're really ever going to get rich is if you sell yourself out, right? So coming, social distortion t-shirt might be the perfect shirt or example to be talking about, because in the punk circles, it's like, man, the last thing you ever really want to do is become a commercial success, because if you do, it's just that you lose your punk status. Being punk is all about raw, in it for basically just to be in it for the art. And so I always think that maybe punks just don't like the commercial aspect because they feel like the only way that you're going to become commercially successful is if you sort of, conform to, the general population. And so I wonder if that same concept applies to, the money avoidance script, where people tend to assume that really the only way that you're going to become successful is if you start making decisions and doing things that are inconsistent with like who you are as a person. And so maybe maybe some individuals just believe that it's just not worth pursuing money because it would mean you have to sell yourself out.
This is so true though. Like you think about that. We have so many stories in like Western culture too about the, was it Faustus by Goethe? Like this guy who wanted to get power, so he sold himself to the devil. Or, there's always the story of the guitarist who made a deal with the devil, and it's like, wow, man, that's kind of dark, but it's like, there is this idea that you're selling out to something. And that the reality is I think one of the things that money avoidant people can forget is that, like I said, money's simply a tool. It's something that you can do with it. It's like, imagine like one day when you're young, right? I saw this the other day. So I was at a restaurant, and these parents, in Vietnam, you see some wild stuff. And I was like at this restaurant, and these parents were letting what looked like a 4-year-old peel garlic with a sharp knife. And I looked down at the kid. I kid you not, man. The kid was like chopping garlic, peeling it, chopping garlic. And I looked over and I was like, that child is going to cut themselves. It is only time. And 2 seconds later, man, thunk, knife just sunk into the tip of the kid's finger. She's freaking out. And, it's like, I see the family wrapping it. And I was just like, I didn't do that. But his parents could re-engage the kid and say, you know what, it's just a boo-boo. You can walk it off. But if they don't, that could become like this memory where knives are a scary thing for that kid. Yeah. And that child will go about trying to avoid those knives because, she got cut that one time. And I think that those early traumas, or, maybe you see your parents fighting about money, or you see something bad happening,
Yeah.
it seems there's something that must have kicked it off.
Yeah. So I don't think that I fall into money avoidance. However, I constantly struggle with, so I wrote a book and I give it away for free. And I was literally,
Yeah.
so I talked to a lot of people about the book, and a lot of individuals will constantly ask me, like, why are you giving your book away for free? Like, why don't you charge some amount of money? Because like, if you're not charging any money, people are going to think that it's not very valuable, or that you don't value yourself or what you're putting into it. And I always stop and think about, wow, like, is there some real deep insecurity about me? And
Mm.
am I thinking that, like, am I subconsciously thinking that what I've written isn't valuable? And and is that the reason why I'm not charging for a particular for my book? And so I wonder if money avoidance also has to do with having a very low opinion of yourself, right? So maybe you don't see yourself as being, you know, talented enough to, like, yield big money. And so maybe
Mhm.
it's not so much about just avoiding it and having to think that you sell yourself out, but it's like not having a very good opinion of yourself and not thinking that you're worthy of of money. Again,
I
it's just a random thought, and I
No,
and
it's a spot on though. Because I was looking off screen, and one of the things that I was searching the intraweb, the chat GPT things, and one of the things that it said was like money avoidance has issues with self-worth. There's
yeah,
often that tie-in. Like, people are like, I don't deserve to be rich. I don't
it,
deserve to have more,
yeah,
and
yeah,
whatever that might be
talent,
rooted
yeah,
to.
yeah. That's deep
it-
stuff.
right?
People like, again, it happens every once in a while. People will like, hey, nobody's going to take you seriously if you're not charging something for your book. Like, you should charge something so that people will take you more seriously. And literally just a few days ago, somebody was asking me, don't you want to make money from your book and what you're doing? And those are legitimate questions. And I constantly think about, should I really actually be charging for my book? And I usually come back to the same general conclusion, which is, yeah, like, I just don't feel right about charging my students a fee for something that I'm using in our class. And I also feel like I've made a good amount of money doing other things, and I don't really need to make money from the book. And so, yeah, I generally go back to sound reasons for not charging it, but it does make me every once in a while wonder, man, so- you know, am I self-sabotaging in some way because I don't truly value what I've done in the book and what I have to say. So, yeah, I could see this money script being something pretty powerful for some people.
Yeah. Well, there's another one. Let's move on to the next one. Money worship. And this one, I'm a combination. I think everyone's a combination of different ones. Probably all have varying degrees of all of them. But
I agree.
money worship is the belief that more money will make everything better. And like, even when I say it and I'm trying to like be objective, I'm like, won't it? Like, I mean, won't it? And this is the time, like, as a children's teacher in the past, and when my students were like, "Well, money can't buy happiness," I was like, "Whoever said that has never been broke," Because money can't buy happiness. This is true, but money can buy food, money can buy vacations, money can
Yeah,
buy trips to Vegas,
yeah,
and that stuff makes me happy.
yeah. Yeah,
But
we've been talking about that for the last few
right?
episodes. Money can buy you freedom, and it can give you
Yeah.
the ability to exert control over your own life. And so, yeah, I think indirectly, it absolutely can make you happy.
But I think what money worship is all about is the idea where you elevate money beyond what it is. And so it's this chasing of it so that, there is, these people might be, and I was reading some of the problems these people have. Money, give me a,
Do it.
one of the things that I was reading about with money worship is that the people actually have spending problems because they never like they go out and they buy and they're like, I need more, I need more, I need more. And so they often will get into overspending and debt. These people are just driven to get more, but there's not the vigilance, cueing one of our later ones, to kind of protect that money.
Yeah.
And so these people will really just go for it. And because again, they just need that feeling of more, whether it be, I'm going to get, 50,000 in credit card debt, or I'm going to get this debt, and these people who think that they're just driving towards something, and this was my uncle. Actually, I think he was more than one of the others, but you could see this in people that often will again, I love my mom, but this is my mom. She's always like, you need more, you need this, you need this, you need this. It wasn't status. It was just this idea and this craving for more. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't know if it's a never ending desire,
Yeah.
it's more about the desire versus
Yeah.
the actual money.
I wonder if, yeah. So again, talking out of my ass.
Which is a good thing to do.
Yeah. But
It's a podcast, man. Who doesn't do that? Let's be real.
it makes shit up. So I wonder again, it's like, I struggle with addiction. And never have I really worried about spending too much and buying. Like, so when I was a teenager, I was a heavy drug user. And then really my whole life, I've struggled with eating. And so those have been my addictions. But I wonder if the money worship is a different form of addiction, right? So it's not
Right.
it's not so much the money itself, but it's the constantly buying stuff or going shopping and that experience that makes you feel good in the moment, right? So people with just looking at the notes, it's like, people tend to go into debt if they money worship. And so I wonder if it's not necessarily the money per se, but it's the purchasing and overspending and buying, which is what they are addicted to. And the only way that you're really going to do that is through, more and more and more money. So yeah,
It's dopamine, man.
yeah,
And I do think it is some of that addictive type of a thing because, it's like, you know, I have it with stuff that I want to get, I've got this weird thing with animals. I love animals. We got a lot of pets, man. Oh, dude, yeah. We have a ton of pets in our house. But I met these guys that are in the reptile community. And dude, they just collect. It's wild. They are a weird crew. I
yeah,
go and meet some of these people. I have a couple geckos and a bearded dragon. But I went to some of these not conventions, but these meet and greets where they have these animal pet fairs and stuff. And these guys are insane. And some of these hybrids that they create, these ball python, hybrids are $10,000. You're like, oh my God, man. And these guys are just stacking them up, but then they breed them and they make a lot of money with that. But yeah, it's weird subsection of YouTube where you go and watch these guys and they talk about their stories. My daughter and I will watch these I've got this rare egg. Let's see what's inside. Look at that beauty. It's wild. But it's another type of addiction, man.
yeah,
And these people that collect, I need another morph.
yeah,
And you see it couple years ago, remember the Pokemon Go craze where
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
actually probably one of the healthiest social media crazes ever because it was making people walk. I was like, this is amazing. Everyone's out in Central Park, with their
Yeah.
phones throwing
Yeah.
their Pokeball.
Yeah.
But it was like some people were going crazy trying to
Yeah.
find the Pokemon. One dude,
Some
I read
kid
this one guy.
some kid in the Bay Area got shot.
What?
He was he was doing his Pokemon thing and wandered into the wrong area and got
Oh,
murdered.
dude.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
while playing that game. Yeah, it's a big I don't think they ever caught the shooter. And so it's every once in a while they'll show an update on the news story. But yeah, that's how I
Okay.
run Pokemon.
But that's a great example though. And I think that's the danger of money worship, because you're chasing something so much that you don't see the danger you're in. So like that kid, he wanted to catch all the Pokemon. And I'm going to hold back on saying some like, catch them all. But like the idea was he was going after them. And like that was the Pokemon, like you got to catch them all, like was the
Yeah.
slogan,
Yeah.
And like, but that's like this whole thing. You need more, you need to collect more.
Yeah.
And that desire puts you into a place of danger,
Yeah.
This kid walking out there. I see people all the time now, like at my work, I was coming down the stairs and all these kids are like on their phone, going down the stairs on their phone. I was like, the stairs are dangerous enough. There's hundreds
Yeah.
of people here. Just look at the stairs. It's a
Yeah.
great thing to do,
Yeah. Or on their
But it's
driving. Yeah, it's crazy.
I see
Yeah.
people riding their motorcycles in Vietnam texting.
Oh man, forget it. That's crazy.
Dude, yeah. Yesterday, I saw this guy, and this is again the same type of thing. The guy was so into his phone, and a driver coming in the other way in a car was so into his phone that the driver of the car nearly hit the motorbike, and all the people around were just like, oh my gosh, freaking out. And that guy on the motorcycle didn't even see it because he was texting in traffic.
Oh, that's crazy.
Dude,
That's crazy.
It was like,
He's
and I
probably
was just like, yeah, he was just like, whatever. But moving it, earlier I misspoke quoting my uncle as money worship. Like my uncle was not money worship. He was money status, which is the next one.
Yeah.
Money status is an interesting one because, my family was working class Brits. They were British. World War II happened and they were like, yeah, it's happened twice. We're going to leave Europe. So they immigrated to the US, but they were working class Brits. And then, my uncles, after they left England, they moved down to Kenya, and then they moved to South Africa, and then they moved to Canada and actually New England, and then hopped around Canada, came back. And they settled in the New England area. But, really working class, no one was above that. And my grandpa, though, it was like Peaky Blinders things. I never saw him, and he was not a Peaky Blinder, but I never saw him out of a 3-piece suit. Never saw him. No, dude, yeah, never saw him without a suit and a vest. And he dressed nice every single day, his whole life. I remember once we went to the beach and I actually did see him in like like an undershirt and shorts, and I was terrified. I started crying.
Shit.
Yeah, I was just terrified. I looked at my mom. I was like, "What's wrong with Grandpa? Where's his suit?
Where's his suit?
Where's his suit?" Yeah, he's at the beach, man.
You think that's why? So I see you wearing the vest and the ties quite a bit. You think that that's
rubbed off on me, man? I think it did. It did. And for me, it was the suits. The suits made the man, and that was always something we grew up with, But one of the interesting things was like with my uncle. So my uncle didn't think the suits were he thought they were meaningless. He was all about the gold. He would wear the gold chains, the gold rings. I mean, it was the 80s, so there were some nice gold chains. It was like that, the good stuff. And, big old thick things, which he was in the radiology. I don't know how that worked, like next to the MRI machine. He would be really into that stuff. And I remember in our town, everyone would talk about Doc Trace. And I love my uncle, and he was actually a great man and did a lot of things for the community, but it was money status, and net worth equals self-worth, And you could see it with all of our interactions with my cousins. Everyone was just really into you got the Smokey and the Bandit cars, you got all that
Yeah.
stuff,
Yeah.
and it was like there was this show, it was all about the show. It was the theatrics. Like, I remember when we would go to church, Dr. Trace had Dr. Trace's pew. Like, there was his place, and
Yeah.
he would pull out the 50 and drop the 50 into the tithing bowl, like the offering goes around. He'll
No
just drop the
shit.
50. Yeah, dude, every week he'd drop a 50 in there. And it's like people see the 50 going past, and everyone knows and everyone else was putting $1 in, too, if they had it. And he dropped a
That's
50 in there, and everyone's like, wow, he just put 50. But
wow.
it was about the gifting, but it wasn't about the gifting. It was
Yeah.
about the show.
Yeah.
Now, bring this forward into our time with social media, and you've got this whole other beast with social money status and social media, man.
Yeah, well, come on, it's everywhere, right? It's keeping up with the
Yeah.
Joneses, it's in the suburbs, it's on social media, it's everywhere. Like everybody, not I shouldn't say everybody, but there's a lot of people that subscribe to this script, I think, where they really want to show off their status and money is a way to do it. It comes up all the time at at in the classroom for me. So I have a lot of first gen students and I have a lot of black students and Hispanic students and this idea that you roll in with like the jewelry, the chains, the gold teeth. There's a lot of projecting success through the jewelry and the clothes and maybe even cars. And so it's like a deep rooted thing where it's not, it stems from not really having much and wanting to prove to the world or your close community that you've made something or you're on your way to making something of yourself. And so like it's a very real thing in my classrooms where I was always like, why would you ever do that? Right. So
Yeah.
if you're struggling to, to make ends meet, like why would you wear $1,000 tracksuit, or why would you want to like go out and buy some really nice necklace when you can't afford, basic stuff? And for a long time, I never really understood it. It's like, man, it's just, that seems like such a bad idea. But when you
Yeah.
really stop and you have
That sounds
conversations with people, it really gets down to like, there's just these deep rooted insecurities that
Yeah.
come up from being like, really, really poor. And so it's a lot about, wanting to display, status and success and recognition. And for me in my classroom, I spend a lot of time, trying to convince students and kids that the more you grow up to be a man or the more you are an independent woman, those are really signaling success more so than what it is you're actually wearing or what you're driving. And so like, to me, again, money status isn't my thing, but there are instances when, a student will see my keychain and, my wife drives an Audi and they'll be like, oh, wow, you drive an Audi. And for a split second, it's like, hey, that's kind of cool that students are looking up to me because I'm successful. And it's just like, that's crazy. I that is so I could see like it happens to me every once in a while where people will talk about how successful I am in the context of money, and so I could see how you would want to pursue that and how money status could be a real thing. And so yeah, I'm down with the money status one. Down with the money
Yeah,
status.
there's a danger to it though, because like keeping up with the Joneses is such a true thing. And First of all, I didn't know that $1,000 tracksuits exist. I am going to have to look that. That's a thing. That's nuts. So I got to look that up. See what
no, dude,
$1,000
I'm telling you, I was like, if I gave you $1,000, like, so I would tell a lot of in my class, I would say, if I gave you $1,000, what would you buy? What would you go do? And the intent is to get students to be like, oh, if I have $1,000, I should invest. And so like, I want to like demonstrate like your mindset is really needs to move away from spending and into investing. So I like get the conversation started with, what would you buy? And this one kid was like, oh, I'd buy a tracksuit. And I'm like, okay, well, what would you buy with the rest? He's like, no, dude, I'm going to buy a fucking really, really nice tracksuit. And I remember thinking the same thing you were, which is like, who the fuck would buy, not only like who would buy $1,000 tracksuit, but do they even really exist? So
sure
they're
they do,
out there. Apparently they're out there.
I believe it. I was like, my wife and I saw some of the stuff that she bought early on in her life. And it was some of that stuff that it was like, what in the hell are you thinking?
Yeah.
And like, are you serious? But like, one of the things that we were having this conversation the other day, and she's like, I feel so bad. All of the other artists are flying business class and first class to America and places. And I was like, dude, but why? Like, but why?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
we save that money and we can put that into something else that's a lot more fun there,
Yeah.
It's interesting because in different cultures, money status is a big thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to name names on this, but there is a family member of one of my wife's family members that is all about money status. Every time we see this person, they've got the gold chains, their kids have the gold chains, their grandkids have the gold chains and diamonds and this and that. I know that person owes a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know that it's all fake. It's a facade. It's like this facade to look at how good everything is, how great everything is.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the dangers with money status is that money status can be hollow. Or it can hollow out your finances because you're driven towards something to show. Like, let's imagine, like, there was a great clip that I saw on Facebook, and it was like this kid goes and shows his college counselor that, the guy was wrong, and he walks up and he starts flashing 10 grand and showing him his new thing. And I was just like, well, hold on. College counselor might be right. Maybe you're walking around 10K cash and you're flashing it in front of everyone. You didn't invest it. Do you have the ability to keep making it?
Yeah.
And it's like, I just dropped a bunch of money into a couple computers. It was a spend, but those computers are going to help me make a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so it was a smart buy, but no one's going to see those computers. No, I'm not going to carry it around on a necklace, be like, look at this Mac Mini, bitch. It's like, ooh, I got a Mac Studio.
These money mindsets, to me, they all seem to have a very negative tone, right? So money avoidance, we're money avoidance. We're talking about the negative aspect of, it must be the case that somebody may not value themselves as much, or they may think that they need to sell themselves out. But like money status is the exact opposite, right? And so now we're talking about, okay, people are trying to show off because they have so much money, or they're trying to project success with money. And so, and money, money worship is sort of the same thing. So like, where's the positive? Where's the positive money mind script? Like, where's the one where we really should be in? Because so far it's been like,
they're all horrible,
I don't want
right?
to be in that one. I don't want to be in money avoidance. I don't want to be in money worship. I don't want to be in money status. And I'm gonna tell you I don't want to be in money vigilance either.
Right?
Yeah.
Well,
it's like,
I think
look, where's the fifth one? Anyway, I guess we should talk about
and maybe we create that. Let's talk about that. I want to dive into that. Money vigilance is the idea that you must save and be cautious with money at all times. Because I thought about that same thing. Like, so you got so there's four. We got money avoidance, money worship, money status, and money vigilance. You must save and be cautious with money at all times. Think about great. And if none of you guys have ever met someone that lived in the Great Depression era, my grandma was Great Depression, and her house was nuts.
Yeah,
she saved everything.
Yeah.
She canned vegetables because she was like, I was like, why? I got this extra leftover. She looked at me. She's like, eat the fucking food off your plate. And you're like, yes, grandma. It was just like, cause she was like, we didn't have food when I was a kid. We had to, and they didn't.
Yeah.
But I think that the idea, this seems like a good script, and money vigilance does seem like the one, and it's the one that the financial experts praise more often, but there's a line, and this is where I think that there is a fifth money script, and maybe this is only available here at Money School. Professor Heath and Sean Trace on the Growing Money with Sean Trace podcast. We are bringing to you something special. It is the fifth money script. Money fucking balance. Maybe at the end of the day, it's about simply, you know what? Everyone has a little bit of money avoidance, but sometimes you don't need to think about everything all the time. And that was kind of what we were talking about budget, the 50, 30, 20. If you overthink, you're going to be bad. It's going to be bad. If you, but if you ignore things, it's bad too. Money worship, man, money does solve problems, money will make many things better. And you know what? Money status is also an important thing. It's like, it's nice to be having status because, and this is one thing my wife taught me, when you have more status, you can get more things done. That can help you, can help other people. You can be that guy, you got a problem. Hold on. Let me call
I know
someone.
a guy.
I know a guy. You call someone and it's fixed. It's resolved. If you've ever had that experience, it's pretty amazing. I've had that happen once where someone called someone for me and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool.
I'm squarely in money vigilance and I'm doing my best to move into money balance. So these money scripts have, apparently they can be inherited. And so this is what I was telling you I was going to hold off on a story. This is the story.
Bring it.
So my great grandmother comes to the US, right, with her husband, poor as shit. They don't have it. They came from, I don't even remember where exactly they came from. But they're living in San Francisco. They don't have any money. The great-great-grandfather takes off. He's like, fuck it. And he disappears. And so my great-great-grandmother is poor as hell, living in San Francisco right around the late 1800s, early 1900s. So she was a seamstress back in, she lived in England before she came to the US, but she wasn't from England. I can't remember where she was from. But so she starts making baby clothes for really wealthy individuals in San Francisco. And so she makes this these fine clothes for these wealthy individuals. And then the mothers are like, hey, can you make me a gown? And so my great-great-grandmother started making high-end women's apparel.
Oh, wow.
And turned this into a massive business. So Magnons, it became Magnons. So the woman was Mary Ann Magnan. So she opens Magnons, a store, a high-end women's apparel store in San Francisco. It was in Union Square. It's where the Macy's building is now. It became a clothing empire on the West Coast of California. We'll be watching movies and in the 1940s movies, they'll constantly reference Magnons. It was a big deal. One of the main, families of San Francisco. There's streets in San Francisco named after some of my uncles. So anyway, it becomes this like she lived in I can't remember the hotel, but she lived in one of the famous hotels in San Francisco and was carted around in a limousine and was just like the epitome of wealth. She had 4 sons, okay? So one of the sons is my great-grandfather, and he is the epitome of money vigilance, right? So they all take over the business, and the 3 brothers all start investing in real estate in San Francisco. And so my family owns like vast majorities of San Francisco real estate, except
Wow.
for my line. So my great grandfather was just like, I am not, that is too risky. We don't know what's going to
Oh,
happen. They grew up poor, and it was only, it was only later in his life when the store became super valuable and the family became very wealthy. So he hoarded his money. He chose not to
oh man.
invest at where all his brothers did. And so over time, right, the brothers' wealth like exploded in San Francisco and his wealth evaporated. Right. So
Wow.
he had really good intentions. He was just like, look, not going to do anything crazy. But just the pure fact of not doing anything and inflation and, making a
Yeah.
few bad decisions here and there, like unfortunately, the line that I came from is like, we didn't have anything. And it was because my great grandfather was like super vigilant. And, so I don't know where it comes from or how it was passed down to me, but I also suffer from the same thing where you know, I have a few investment accounts outside of my retirement account, and I have like $1 million in one of them. And I'm also living in this house, and the kitchen needs to be updated. And I constantly have these conversations with a friend of mine. And he's like, dude, you have to you have to liquidate some of your investments and redo your kitchen, just like spend 150,000 on a brand new kitchen. And dude, I cannot. I mean, I'm gonna do it, but it's like the most painful thing to spend to take money out of my investments and use it to upgrade my kitchen. And I honestly, I have way more than I need. And I just, for some reason, have this mental block about spending money, and it's clearly money vigilance. And so I feel like I started this conversation out saying that I'm squarely in money vigilance, and I'm doing my best to move into money balance, where it's just like I really need to force myself to like say that it's okay to spend some of the money, and
Yeah.
I don't have to obsess about getting more money or being worried about running out of money. It's just like I feel like I need to spend some of the money I have in order to have a more healthy relationship. So yeah, squarely
Yeah.
in money vigilance.
And I think that like one of the things too that I would tell people that are starting to look at these is that, you know, all of us are in all of them at some point in time. And I think that the idea is, it's just starting to recognize where you're at. I did judo for a long time. And when you're throwing someone, one of the things that you realize is that judo people are very good at making you fall on your ass. And if you overextend this way, they'll take you that way. If you go this way, they'll take you that way. If you're pulling back, they're like, we can go that way. We'll start going back. And they're like, now we're going to go here. And
Interesting.
one of the things too is it's like if you go too far any direction,
Yeah.
and again, when it comes to money balance, if you go too far any direction, it's not a good thing, And if you can find that balance, however you do it, man, it's a good thing. What are some of the things that you would recommend for people to find balance in their financial life today?
Yeah, I wish I had really good advice. Um, I don't feel like I have good advice other than other than to just reiterate the same stuff that we've been saying for the last 3 or 4 episodes, which is, the more conscious we are about the way that we spend our money and the way that we allocate it to our priorities, the more likely it is we avoid like being, falling into one of these money scripts and the negative aspects of one of these money scripts. And so for me personally, the advice I'm taking is I'm really trying to make sure that I'm balancing and that I'm spending my monies consistently with my priorities and not overextending myself, and making sure that, all of my decisions are consistent with my priorities.
I love that, man.
And I guess that would be my advice. But again, this is all sort of new to me, and so I'm moving through it, I think, at the same rate and pace that many of the listeners are as well.